Welcome back again to another episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. I'm Leon,
And I'm Matt.
and today we thought we would talk about ram care. I know some of you guys probably already turned your rams out. I know Matt and I, at least I did anyway. I forget when your fall breeding is, Matt, but my rams are got their work all done. And we need to turn the cleanup ram out yet. But
Yep.
did you do a fall breeding group, like a January and February lambing group?
Yeah, that's probably our biggest group. So we
Yeah.
turned those Rams out around September 1st and only had them out for barely 3 weeks. Then we pulled everybody and put everybody back together, and now we have some cleanup Rams out there to get anybody that didn't breed in that basically one cycle. So yep, that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. So I thought maybe we should start with by saying, which you all regular listeners all know, that we are not veterinarians. It's like a lot of you here have heard me say already, if you can put up with listening to two dumb farmers talk, have at it. So we will just share some of our insights, some of the things we have learned, and maybe some tips on ram care. And I thought, Matt, we could maybe split it up into maybe three different little segments, like we had talked beforehand.
Sure.
Could we look at it in three different categories? Let's look at pre-breeding, during breeding, and then post-breeding.
Gotcha.
So, where do you want to start with this pre-breeding? How
Yeah.
far in advance do you start looking and thinking about that kind of stuff?
Well, I was gonna say for other people, they should start looking at their rams by for fall breeding, they should start looking by July if they need any new rams because our ram sale is in July, third week in July usually, and I always get calls this time of year for people that need rams, and it's like, well, sorry, you missed it. So
Yeah,
But no, in all seriousness, really, we're breeding so regularly. We have plenty of rams here, but you should be looking at least 2 months before you're breeding, looking your rams over and hey, do I have enough for this year? Maybe some of them are getting older. Maybe I need to bring some younger ones in, and then that would also be a good time to look at what body condition are they. Um, they need to start feeding them a little bit more, fleshing them up a bit, getting into condition. Because if you wait till, I mean, a month before, um, and you realize that you need some rams, for one, it's going to be a little hard to find one and put them through um, your protocol for bringing in new rams. And if you need to put body condition on them in a month, doesn't give you a whole lot of time either. So I would say
def
about
a
two
month.
months before.
Yeah, a month definitely is not enough to. You're just pushing your luck.
Yeah.
And your comment about, I guess there's a little difference if you need to buy a RAM compared to if you already have one. But if you don't have a RAM, well, I would get your stuff figured out well before 2 months.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to tell people, if you know you want a RAM this year, like, talk to me in April.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, otherwise you're going to be pretty far down the list.
Well, I get a lot of calls for people that want to turn them out now. So
Well,
2 months is a start, but yeah, no, you're right. You should be looking, if you need new Rams for this year, start looking in the springtime.
right.
Get on breeders lists, whatever.
Because I know, it I there's guys that buy Rams from me that without fail they call, like, and they need one next month.
Yep.
Usually it's the same people.
Yeah.
And sometimes the picking choice isn't very good anymore.
Sure.
And it's always like a little frustrating to me as a breeder, because you know you know what that guy really needs, and they aren't here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's always hard for me. Just it seems every time this year, and it's usually new people that I haven't dealt with a lot before, that are calling me this time of year and need Rams. I had three, four calls in the last week for people that were needing Rams, and I'm assuming they need them now. It's uh, you know, November already, so I'm assuming they're wanting to turn them right out. But
right.
yeah, you need to look ahead a bit.
And I like the point you brought out about if you're bringing a new RAM, your your quarantine protocol and stuff, depending on what all you're testing for and everything, you need at least 30 days quarantine.
Yeah.
Um, Body condition, if you need to change that, definitely need more than a month.
And just for bringing in a new RAM, you need at least 30 days for him to adapt to your farm, preferably before you
Eh,
turn him in with the ewes.
Right. I mean, there's these situations, and I'm sure we've all been part of them, where a ram came off the trailer and you turn them right out. It works some of the time, but
Yeah,
it's really not a good scenario.
it's not ideal.
Yeah. Us I know I wince when I see these young rams leave and they just get dumped out somewhere. And
Yeah.
maybe that's something we can talk about.
Well, yeah, let's go into that right now with young rams, because that is it's different. I mean, we use a lot of ram lambs. We use a lot of rams that are under a year old.
Hmm.
Usually about 6 to 8 month old when we use them. But you have to consider that's a young growing ram yet. So if you're gonna eat, even if you don't put them out to too many ewes, so a ram lamb, I would say 20 to 30 ewes a ram lamb can cover.
Yep.
But even if you stay within those parameters, what I've found, if it's an aggressive breeder and you turn them out with those ewes and you just run them with those ewes all winter, which some guys do, they'll buy rams and they'll just run them with their ewes all winter. If it's aggressive breeder, he's going to lose body condition like crazy. Even though all the ewes will be long bred, he's going to
Hmm.
be checking and chasing ewes. So what I always tell guys when they buy ram lambs is turn them out there, get your ewes bred, um, and then pull them out again and feed them and keep them growing. Because if you stun them at that age, they're never going to develop well. So you need to I don't maybe yeah, no, you need to baby those ram lambs a little bit.
And that goes a little bit against the way some people like to operate or think you can or should operate, the idea of babying. But there is a different, especially let's talk about a grass-fed guy or very low input operation. They want to turn the sheep out, and sometimes we say, collect the paycheck when they ship lambs, and we all know it doesn't quite work that way. But just dumping that ram out there and leaving them out there long term, I have had several scenarios where, by all appearances, those rams came down with coccidia,
Hmm.
like let's say a month after breeding or two
Yeah.
months after, and they just could never quite kick it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of two over the years in particular that I just think they got too run down.
Well, and if you think about it, those were young rams they bought from you. They probably didn't have on their farm real long, and they turned them out with their ewes. Like you're not setting them up for success very well there.
No.
That's
Nope.
asking a lot from a young ram. And the other thing is I like easy care rams as much as anybody, rams that just stay fat all the time. What I have found is be a little careful with that because sometimes those are just your lazy rams. Most of the really aggressive breeders I've found are not quite as easy care. Because if they're in with the ewes, they're running off weight, they're running ewes. So they're not just fat old pigs all the time. They shouldn't be. But yeah, those ram lambs need a little extra care, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I have a 2-year-old ram here that we pulled out from with the ewes here 2 weeks ago or something. And I bet that ram lost, I think I told somebody else 30 pounds, and I was looking at him the other day. I wish I would have weighed him now.
Yeah.
He still looks really good, but he lost weight big time. But he was in with 40, almost 50 ewes.
Mhm.
And he was in for more than 3 weeks too. But I mean, it pulled him down.
Yeah. Yep. It's a lot of work. Another thing we should probably talk about with while we're on the subject of ram lambs is how young can you use them?
Right. Can we just back up and talk about, we talked about ram, ewe to ram ratio on a ram lamb, and we said, 20 to 30. What about a mature ram? I often, I think you and I both probably have a little smaller breeding groups than some people do because we're using multiple sires.
Yeah.
A commercial operation that might even turn out multiple rams in a group. It probably doesn't change what your ewe to ram ratio should be, but something in the 50 ewes per ram is probably about the max I ever go.
Yeah.
What would you say to a breeder that has 65 ewes and they want to have just one ram?
I mean, you're pushing it there. And the other thing to think about is you're putting all your apples in one basket. That
Right.
would maybe be my bigger concern. And we can talk some more about pre-breeding exams and stuff like that, but um so with 65 ewes, I would tell them, yes, you can breed 65 ewes with one ram. Worst case scenario, well, I shouldn't say worst case scenario. It might drag out your breeding, your lambing a little bit.
Right.
So if he can't get them all bred that first cycle, he'll just get them the second or third cycle. So if you're okay with that, um, you can do it. But again, I would be on the side of rather than putting all your apples in one basket, if you have 65 ewes, it's worth having two rams.
Right.
Now, if you have a 180 ewes, you could I would sooner be on the side of okay, we can do it with three rams rather than needing four.
Yeah, but then you already have a fail safe, especially if you're running all three of them together.
That's what I'm
Which,
saying.
yeah,
You're not putting all your apples in one basket. Where if you have
right.
65 ewes, I don't know. I have a problem with having too many rams. I never never have a hardly ever have a problem of not having enough rams. So
Yeah.
um
Why don't we talk a little bit about breeding soundness exams? I know that neither of us do it in our flocks, and Matt, you beforehand you had some reasons as to why you don't. But you
yeah,
alluded to the fact of using one ram on 60 ewes, and a guy's in a situation like that doesn't want to get to lambing time and realize he had a dud. And it doesn't happen very often, but it can and does happen sometimes that
yeah,
that you actually have a dud.
yeah. So a couple of years ago we had, you go to these sessions and stuff and they talk about, oh, you should do breeding soundness exams. And so I talked with my vet about doing it. But she wasn't really keen on doing it because one, our Katahdins are a very fertile breed to start with. So the odds are a lot smaller than if you had some show breed that's known to have fertility issues. The other thing is, we're breeding 3 times a year. So she said, you want to check them before every breeding? And she also said if I check them a month before, which they recommend you check them actually 6 to 8 weeks before.
Yeah.
Um, but her thing was if she checks them a month before, something could still happen to that ram in that last month that caused them to be unfertile. So in just thinking through it, like we split our flock into uh, multiple breeding groups, single sire groups. But then we put them all together and run a cleanup ram, a well-proven ram that we've used for years already, in that we know is good. So even if we have a dud there, not
How do
all
you
is
know? How
lost.
do you know he's good if you didn't test him?
Well, we've had a lot of lambs out of them, put it that way.
Yeah, but something
Because
could have happened to him 30 days before, I'm
yeah,
just messing with you.
Right. We had this discussion before the podcast, but it could, but the odds are a lot smaller.
Yeah,
What you're really looking for is that ram that was just a dud. And I had in my whatever it has been now 16 years of raising sheep, I had one that was a complete dud, and it was a white Dorper for what that matters.
a
But
lot.
yeah. Uh, it was one time, Leon. Uh,
I like
and
white
there,
Dorpers.
there we actually used them. We used them the first year we used them in a multi-sire group, so we never knew it. The second year we used him by himself, but we used him by himself, and we had already bred the next group of ewes before we figured out that he was a dud. So there we had two groups of ewes that were supposed to be bred and weren't. You know, we ultrasounded them and we figured out what was going on. So it wasn't like we came into springtime and 60 ewes or whatever came up open. That would have been a bit of a problem, you know. That would have been pretty costly. I mean, the way
It would have been.
it was costly enough. We had much later lambs out of those ewes, but um
Yeah.
so I guess, breeding exams, I don't do them, but I do think there's some scenarios where we should. Like we were talking about that guy that has one ram and 50 ewes. He might want to consider doing it. But another thing is if you're in that scenario, if you use a marking harness, um, and switch it out every 3 weeks with a different color, if your ewes keep getting marked over and over again, your ram's not settling them. So, even there you can get away without doing it. But you need something, I think, in that case, because you don't want to breed even your 50, 60 ewes, think they're bred, and then you come into springtime and you find out they're open.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be very, very frustrating.
that, yeah,
It would make a breeding soundness exam or a marking harness very, very cheap.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know.
So
I know that's kind of the common advice is to do breeding soundness exams.
they they
Certainly.
basically will cover you for a ram that's a real dud or a ram that
Mhm.
had an injury or a ram that overheated. And if you do it 6 to 8 weeks before you turn out the rams, it will give you time to come up with a backup plan. Okay, I need to go buy a new ram. I need to use a different ram, whatever. But it will not protect you doing it that far in advance. Your ram could have a ram that got overheated, and a ram that gets overheated can definitely can affect fertility big time, and it
Yeah.
doesn't just go away overnight. It can take a couple weeks
Yeah. In that
for
case, it would push your lambing back likely.
right.
But I'm
Yep.
thinking, so we're saying 6 to 8 weeks. A lot of people in our area here are breeding September 1st like we are. So 6 to 8 weeks would put you in August. There's a pretty good, actually, no,
No.
that would put you in July, beginning to middle of July. There's a pretty good chance that ram's not super fertile then anyway. Depends on the breed
It depends on the weather.
and
Yeah.
on the weather and everything. So I guess it's not a fix all, but certainly has its place, I think.
Yeah.
And if you're doing single sire groups, um, not using cleanup rams or anything like that, you probably want something in place to catch if that ram's a dud. So if you're using marking harnesses, you would probably catch that. The other thing is if you're ultrasounding your ewes, at least you'd catch it before springtime. Still in time to get a late spring lambing.
Yeah. So something else I thought we should touch on, and probably this isn't a big deal for either of our flocks, but making sure that ram is doesn't need dewormed if you
Hmm.
deworm your sheep. You basically want that ram in tip-top shape well in advance. So you don't want to find out he has a problem, obviously, before it's too late. Vaccinations, you probably have a time of the year when you do that. Doesn't that wouldn't have things like CD&T wouldn't have to be pre-breeding necessarily. But trimming feet, I mean that
Yeah.
ram's going to be putting a lot of miles on, and you're gonna want him tender-footed, freshly trimmed
Yeah.
the day you turn them out. Really, it'd be better to trim them a couple weeks in advance.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. The last thing you want to do is to find out when you go to turn him out, realize he's really
Limping.
long on his feet and decide to trim him then. That's
Yeah,
if you do that, just, make sure you don't over trim at all.
right. Because over trimming, yeah, he ought to have a little bit of regrowth on those feet because
Yeah.
he's gonna be pounding the dirt.
I had something
Let's see.
on ram lambs I thought we should talk about, but now I forgot. Oh, how young can we use
Oh
ram
yeah,
lambs? And
yep,
let's do how young we can use them and then how long you can use them.
yeah. How young can you use him? Boy, I tell people if he's big enough to get it done, he could probably get it done.
Yep. We have used about the youngest we've ever used them is 5 month old. And that works. I wouldn't put them with a lot of ewes at that point, but if we had a young ram we wanted to get some lambs out of, we put them in there for 2, 3 weeks, something like that, and what we get out of them, we get out of them. But that's pretty young. And there again, we should say that's going to depend a lot on your breed. And then the other thing, I mean, they can definitely breed younger than that. If I have ram lambs in with mature ewes that are 3, 4 month old, I want them out of there because they're gonna start
Yeah,
breeding those ewes.
your biggest danger is your mature ewes, not your ewe
Yeah,
lambs. That's how I feel anyway.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
I agree. Unless you have Romanovs, and then those ewe lambs I've found out can get bred at 3 month old in late fall.
that's crazy. I forgot
Yeah.
about that story. Yeah,
Um, so yeah, you can use them pretty young, but you got to consider a little bit.
yeah. What's your oldest ram you got on the farm right now?
Oh, right now, my oldest is probably coming up on 5 years old. And we rarely use Rams much past that, mainly just by then, because by then we've moved on to their sons and grandsons. So it's not that you can't, but if you want me to give an average age of what a ram can be, probably I would say 5 years is going to be probably about average. Some of them I know can go up to 10 years, but once you start going over that 5 years, you're definitely gonna um, have to watch them a bit more.
Yeah, if there's a 10-year-old ram around, he's around for a reason, and you're probably going to be doing some pretty select breeding groups to him,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
your U to ram ratio is going to start going back to like we talked about for a ram lamb probably.
Yep.
They aren't going to be able to cover as many.
Yep.
I had a ram here up until this summer that he would have been 7 here in January. And I had him up until I realized that he could bully my livestock guardian dog, and the dog would not guard its dog food. And anyway, that was to his
Demise.
demise. Yep.
Yeah.
At least that's what we decided. But anyway, he was an old codger. Anything else we should cover kind of during breeding and pre-breeding?
Well, I think during breeding, I mean, we've already talked about using marking harnesses. We don't use marking harnesses all the time, but they're certainly valuable, and it's at the very least cool to see what's happening out there. But certainly where we use them a lot is on young rams, like I was talking about. We want to see if actually something's happening. Um, in our spring breeding, we almost always do just to again get a feel of what's happening. But then in fall breeding, I'm usually too lazy to put it on our 10 rams or whatever, 8, 10 rams that we're usually using. So I
Yeah,
usually don't. But then, like my cleanup rams that are out now, I have marking harnesses on them. So now I kind of get a feel for who's going to be in that cleanup group. And I'll actually um, go through those ewes, and anybody that got marked with the cleanup ram, I'll record in the stock recorder in a separate group. That way I can get them out of there. Know they're lambing later. So marking
yeah,
harnesses are a good tool. Making sure your rams are staying in decent condition. Again, especially those ram lambs, if they're just falling apart, I mean, don't kill them. Pull them out of there and put someone else in, and then
give
decide
him a
where
break.
you want to go from there.
Right. So on that marking harness subject, this would be a good time to talk about marking crayons maybe. There, I don't know if everybody knows it, but you can get different temperature rating for some of
Mhm.
those crayons. Where
Yep.
are you getting your crayons right now?
Premier One.
And Premier One, I should look what they're selling right now. They have changed it around over the years, some haven't they?
I think they only sell one anymore.
One
At one
temperature, like an
time,
all season.
yeah, at one time they had like 3 different seasons, like hot, warm, and cold or something like that. But I don't think they were happy with some of those others, so now they just have I think they only have one that's like a year round, and
They
that's
actually
what we
have two of
use.
them.
Okay.
I have an Easy Mark and a Netex. I don't know how you say that, but it looks like the Easy Mark still has different temperature ratings. And I
Okay.
should look. I really like the crayons I used this year, and I had a breeder reach out to me, and he was changing his crayon like every 3 days, maybe.
Okay.
I've had a marking harness on a ram since August 25th. Just took it off yesterday. It still had some crayon on it, and I would say it was still marking.
Yeah.
I never had one that marked as well as that one did and as long as that one did. So I told this guy that had the rams that were burning through crayons in 3 days. I said, "Well, what temperature rating do you have?" And I don't remember what he had, or he might have actually been buying the crayons on Amazon. I can't remember.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ones out there.
So
I'm using that
basically,
net next net
Netex,
text.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I really like those. I have used the Easy Mark. I felt they wore down faster. I didn't like them as well. We use the net text year round.
So, so they have the Netex one has an all weather, and they have a cold,
Oh, I see that.
and they have a hot. So
Yeah.
just for reference, so if the one is a cold weather cran, the cran is going to be softer.
Yeah.
And if it's a hot weather cran, it's going to be harder.
Yeah.
Just so the heat on a soft cran, it'll those were probably what the guy was using that was burning through crayons in 3 days. It was probably a cold temperature crayon, and he was using it in August.
Because it does make a difference. Like I use those all weather, and in the summertime when it's hot, they wear down a lot faster than once you get into winter. And then we're also usually more on cleanup rams, and they're not breeding as much. Makes a difference too. But yeah,
Right. I don't know what those things are made out of, but I had some trouble with some livestock guardian dogs trying to eat those things already off of
really,
rams. Yeah.
never had
I
that.
I don't know if they smell kind of waxy. I don't know why the dog would want to eat them, but what about when we pull these rams out? Then what do you do when you pull your rams out? What do you do when you to acclimate them back so they all learn to get along again? Do you put them in a small pen?
Yeah, yeah. We put them in a small tight pen for a day maybe. It doesn't have to be real long. And then we all turn them all out in a big group. Um, but there is some people that keep their rams separate by themselves. Um, each ram in his own pen, but I don't know. That's a lot of work. But
I like to it. Yeah, go ahead.
I have had rams get killed over the years.
Yeah, I had probably at least three of them now, and kind of makes a guy sick after a while. And
Yeah,
it does make me a little gun shy. I know it. Uh, I have a ram here right now that's not mine, and I can tell you one thing: I won't be putting him in with any of my other rams.
yeah,
I'm not gonna risk it.
yeah. Or if you have a
But
really expensive ram, I have bought back from a customer. They had brought it back and got another one. I was going to turn this guy into a teaser ram, and I don't think he had ever been housed with other rams, so he wasn't real smart. It took him about 5 seconds to kill that ram. Just busted his neck.
yeah,
And the only other time I've had a ram get killed was actually in a breeding group of three rams. And I didn't see it happen, but I came out and there was a dead ram there, and I I don't, you know, he was in perfect condition. I don't think it was
yeah,
anything else. I think they just got to fighting. But so it can happen, but at the same time, we have 10 to 12 stud rams here pretty much at any time. And I'm not going to put them each in a separate pen. So
right.
survival of the fittest, I guess. But
One thing I don't like about an individual pen is, I mean, they are a flock animal. They like
yeah,
buddies. Most animals like buddies, but I'll usually try. I mean, I'll keep at least a one ewe lamb or something, maybe a little another ram lamb, something if I'm going to pet them separate. And
yeah,
something else I think is important that you can't just take these rams and lock them in a box stall in the back corner of the barn somewhere and feed them little hay and water and expect them to really perform top notch.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think sometimes they get some farmers can tend to neglect them
sure.
a little bit, and they want to make sure they're taking optimum care of their ewes and everything, but it's really just as important that ram's in top notch condition to get his job done.
Yeah. And if he's gonna have to go out and breed ewes on grass, he should be living his off season out there on grass, or at least in a dry lot where he can get some exercise. I know it's a pain to have a group of rams, but like you were saying, you can't just pen them in the back corner of the barn, feed him hay and maybe some grain if he needs it to keep condition on, and then turn him out in a big pasture with ewes and expect him to do a good job in breeding them. So they are kind of a pain to manage separate yet, but that's
They
part
are.
of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think one thing with, we're talking about pulling rams out, um, ram lambs at that age. they should go in a separate group and they should be fed a bit more than the others because we want to keep condition on them. And even sometimes that yearling ram might, if he got run down pretty hard on during breeding season, we might consider putting him in a separate pen and feeding him a little bit extra. And then the rest of them, should be in pretty good condition. They can just get turned out on grass somewhere, ram
Right.
lot, whatever.
Most scenarios, a mature ram could get pulled and
They
go
could.
back to a maintenance, whether it's just back on the pasture or a maintenance type ration,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. But I've
And
I've been, I mean, we still do that, but I have been a little quicker to bring our rams up pre-breeding and get some condition on them. Partly because, we're breeding 3 times a year. If we have a ram that we really like, he's breeding a lot of ewes over a year's time. So, you got to
he
make up
might
for that a little
he
bit.
might only have 6, 8 weeks of a break time
Yeah.
off between. Yeah, go
Something
ahead.
I something I think we could talk about real quick, yeah, is we talked a little bit about multi-sire breeding groups.
Yep.
Um, Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the advantages of that. And also the other thing, if we're running multiple rams together, I like it to always be more than two. Because if you run two rams together, they can spend a lot of time fighting.
Right. If you have three, one's usually getting the job done, the other two are scrapping.
Yeah, and then they don't scrap real long.
Yeah.
It's a lot less fighting because if you have two, they'll just square up and one will keep the other one away and spend all his energy doing that. So if we're doing multi-sire groups, I always like to do at least three. And then there's no reason you can't just, keep going up from there, depending how big of a flock you have.
Right.
Um, but the benefit there is, if one of those rams is a dud, well, the other two are going to get the ewes covered. Um, Another place we do the multi-sire breeding a good bit is in the springtime, because if you have multiple sires in there, it seems to help get the ewes to cycle. You have more rams in there,
More
more
ram activity.
chasing.
Yeah.
Less chance, springtime out of season, less chance that you have just maybe not a dud ram, but just a lazy ram or a ram that isn't good at spring breeding. So if you have multiple sires in there, kind of protects you with that a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Just an interesting side note on multi-sire mating, which Matt, you and I have both seen this because we're selling registered breeding stock. We obviously have to know who sired what. So the question could come up like, can you do multi-sire mating in a group like that and know who the sire is? Well, there's something called parentage testing that you can do. You have to just pull samples on your lambs and also have DNA samples on the possible sires. And something that's interesting is you will have, and I know we've both seen it, you will have twins or triplets, and they will have different sires.
yeah, yeah, that's really cool with our NSIP system because it compares those two sires as directly as you can. I mean,
Right.
you have lambs out of the same ewe that are sired by different sires. Um, yeah. Another really cool thing, and a reason that I really like the multi-sire breeding groups, even though, we have to do that parentage testing, is we find that when we do multi-sire breeding groups, sometimes the lambs are split pretty evenly. Like you have three sires, each sire has about the same amount of lambs. But we've had it happen quite a few times already where we have three sires in a multi-sire breeding group and one ram sires like 80% of the lambs. 90% of the lambs eaten. Um, and I always found that really interesting. And from a breeding stock perspective, that's the ram I want. I don't know how he's I don't know how he's doing that if he's just that much more aggressive with breeding ewes, which I kind of doubt. I mean, he probably is, but I'm thinking those other rams have to be breeding ewes as well. So my theory on it has always been that ram is just so much more fertile, um, that he's just settling more ewes than the other rams. But I don't know. Either way, I
It's
don't see any downsides to a ram that's getting most of the ewes bred. Like that's got to be a positive from a breeding stock perspective.
it's probably either he's more fertile or else it's a disposition thing, and the other two guys are just cranky old beggars and they're all fighting.
Yeah, that's always, but like we've had it where it was like 90% of the lambs were sired by one ram. And if that
Yeah.
ram was in there, it was always that way, it seemed. Um, and then I'm thinking, those other rams have to be breeding more ewes than that, which is where
Yeah,
I
you
kind of
would
come
think.
up with the theory that he's just more fertile. His fish just swim a little faster. I
They
don't
they
know.
they get there first. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I know in cattle, and I think in some breeds of sheep, like larger flocks, they've actually focused on that using multi-sire groups and looking at which rams or bulls are getting the most ewes covered. We don't, have enough almost to do that repeatedly, but I think it's an interesting concept.
Well, I mean, in a from a cattle perspective, I mean, goodness, if you have three bulls out there and you almost need three bulls to cover the amount of cows you have, and one of the bulls is doing 90% of the work, like it's kind of pointless to feed those other two bulls.
Yeah.
I mean, it just kind of escalates the thing on the cattle perspective because you're feeding a lot more, a yeah, more of an animal unit, I guess,
Yeah,
than feeding one ram.
and now I'm thinking of lots of fun things we could do with this. Like I'm just thinking like it would be great turn like three rams out to 1,000 ewes, and see how many they can actually get bred and like who can get the most ewes bred in the shortest amount of time. Because I
Yeah, I
think
think
you'd be
that's
amazed at how, we use the ratio of 1 to 50. I guarantee you there's rams that could breed 150, 200 ewes in
oh
one
yeah.
cycle. And then the next one is maybe barely going to get 50 bred.
He hardly gets down the first street. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be an awesome thing to see some research on. Yeah, but I'll let you do the experiment and risk having 500 ewes come up open.
Well, now you'd breed in the next cycle.
Okay.
You'd breed in
Yeah,
the next cycle.
I'm just thinking about all that downtime.
I, yeah, I'm a ways from 1,000 ewes yet.
Yeah. All right, I think that's a wrap for today.
Hey, sounds good. I think
So,
it'd be good to remind our listeners that we always appreciate feedback. We do take questions, and we certainly appreciate input on people we should have on. Um,
absolutely. Do us a favor, share it with your friends, and also give us some feedback so that we know what type of content you want to see put out there. We'll see you folks next time. Thanks again, folks, for listening to another episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. This call is brought to you by Lost Creek Wholesale, your universal feeder distributor and your supplier of top quality sheep and goat handling and feeding equipment. If you're looking for feeders, lambing jugs, hay racks, tub and alley systems, portable handling systems, you name it, we got it. Check out our website, www.lostcreekwholesalellc.com, or better yet, give us a call, 717-310-3641. Thanks again, and we'll catch up with you next time.